So I'm back from China, and I have been talking to a lot of people who want to know what it was like being in China. And I would normally say the rumors are true, they are living in the future. But then I started thinking about it. Actually, they're not living in the future. We have all of the same technological advances that they have. The difference between China and the West is distribution. In the West, all the new fun stuff is premium, right? You have to pay extra for that. So that means only wealthy people or people with disposable income get it. In China, a few of these technologies, not all of them, but just a few of them are deemed too important to capitalize. So they distribute that. That gets put out to everybody. So, in aggregate, what that does is that makes everybody feel like in China, they are advancing beyond us in the West because it is a more even, and it really is just a handful of technologies. That's good management.
So I just got back to New York City from my trip to China, and here is what a subway looks like in the most expensive city on the planet, and here is what the subway looks like in Shanghai. Just thought I would show you guys that.
Within my first few months of living in China, I realized how crazy the propaganda that I was taught about China was. I truly thought that this was going to be like North Korea light. The society and culture was definitely different, but a lot of the scary things that China had, we have in the United States now. There are cameras literally everywhere in China. This is the street I lived on, and if I remember correctly, there's a camera like right there. There's a lot of fear mongering around facial recognition and the government like tapping into your phone calls to listen. All of that stuff is true, but all of it also exists in the United States in some way. But when we do it, it's fine. They cannot access certain books that would make them, turn against the country. We now have the same thing in the United States. This book is banned. This book is banned. Surely this is banned. This is probably banned as well. I know that Bridge to Terabithia is also banned. As Americans, I don't think we can ever comprehend how safe China is. I had to walk up a hill to get to my apartment, and one time I was coming home from some trip and a taxi dropped me off at the bottom of the hill, so I had to walk all the way up it alone at 3 a.m. It was safe for me to do that at 3 a.m. with a bunch of luggage. There's some people wandering around smoking like it wasn't a big deal. I was safe, and I don't think that we truly comprehend what it's like to be in an environment where you're not constantly looking for exits, worrying about your surroundings constantly. And in China, the worst thing that could happen to me is I get robbed. In America, the worst thing that can happen to me is I'm unalive. Not having that mental load is great, and my students would always ask me if I'd ever been a part of a mass because they know that that happens a lot here. Also, in China, they actually treat children like humans. Their culture, their children are their retirement plan. Children are so protected and prioritized. You were on a bus sitting in a seat. If a child came on the bus and there were no other seats for them to sit in, you are supposed to give up your seat to the child. I have seen elderly people give up their seat for a child. I'm not talking like a little baby. I'm talking about like 9-year-olds. It's very different, and I don't think parents are as anxious about their child getting home safely in general because they call it like a honor shame society. When someone in your community gets hurt, no matter who it is, it's shameful on the whole community. If something was to happen to me, the community would feel really bad and embarrassed. My students, it was their first time living away from home, and they cared about each other's well-being so much, like it was very cute. There are downsides, like this can create a very overprotected society. They're very like risk averse. It's just so nice knowing I can walk around a city and not be worried about getting punched in the face, like what's happening in New York City right now. Foreign teachers definitely have different privileges, but I just found myself really impressed with the culture. Overall, the average middle class life in China is a lot better than here in the United States. I know you hate to hear it, but it's true. And just like every country, there's poverty, exploitation, like there's other things that are really bad that are happening in China, but none of them are unique to China. As Americans are like, communist China is so bad, so scary. Chinese people are like, at least I can send my kid to school without worrying about them getting...
Shocking, isn't it? The United States spent decades portraying China as a threat, calling communism dangerous, while ignoring the results in plain sight. In only 25 years, China lifted over 800 million people out of poverty, according to the World Bank. They did it by putting national interest above corporate greed. Corrupt businessmen and politicians are punished severely, often by death, which proves capital is not above the law. There are no government contracts for private elites. The government handles the work directly, making efficiency a national standard instead of a profit scheme. Monopolies are crushed before they grow, while innovation and competition are pushed forward to serve the people. America never wanted this story told because it exposes how corruption, lobbying, and corporate capture have hollowed out its own system. China ignored the noise and focused on results. While America traded long-term power for short-term profits, China built infrastructure, created self-sufficiency, and raised living standards at a scale never seen in human history. They built fast rail, modern cities, advanced technology, and a disciplined system that does not bend to billionaire interests. If America had adopted these principles, it would have stayed dominant for centuries. The world now sees that China succeeded because it is strict on what America tolerates: corruption, monopoly, and profit over people. That is why more nations are turning to China's model, because it works and because it speaks for itself.
He took the opportunity of Ma Yun to attack him and trying to tell the entrepreneurs, don't you dare interfere with the political goals of the Chinese Communist Party. The political goals are supreme, are primary. You are supposed to make wealth to enable China to be strong and wealthy and so on, but you are not to interfere in politics. That is very fundamentally Chinese. In many ways, that is the original Chinese traditional position of the Quan, very different. The Shi is very different from the Shang, and they must be separate, and the Shang must never be allowed to take part in the politics of rule. That separation is in a way very traditional. It is a return in a way to Chinese roots about the nature of governance. There must be an order, a hierarchy, and the Shi is above that, and you cannot mix up the two.
China makes it clear that politics and business cannot stand on equal ground, because the moment they do, money begins to dictate governance instead of the state directing the market. When business interests sit on the same level as political power, the lines blur, rules get rewritten, and the public stops being the priority. This is why the Chinese system forces the party to lead while business follows, embedding party committees inside major companies to ensure alignment with national strategy. Anti-corruption measures are constant and uncompromising, with bribery punished by long prison terms or, in severe cases, death. Procurement is handled directly by the state with strict audits, blacklists, and lifetime bans to prevent favoritism. Officials are promoted based on measurable outcomes such as infrastructure built, poverty reduced, or growth achieved, not on who they know or who funds them. By separating politics as the command and business as the tool, China has been able to maintain a system where competition thrives within rules, services expand, and the public interest outweighs private profit. America reveals what happens when politics and business are treated as equals. Campaigns depend on corporate donations, lobbyists draft legislation, and the revolving door ensures regulators get rewarded with lucrative industry jobs after leaving office. The result is services that decline in quality while costs rise without limit. Healthcare consumes more than 17% of GDP, yet Americans die younger than citizens of nations spending half that amount. Lobbying expenditures surpass $4 billion annually, shaping policy in favor of entrenched industries rather than ordinary citizens. Monopolies grow unchecked, small firms suffocate, and wages stagnate despite rising productivity. Corruption cases drag on until fines are written off as business expenses, while executives remain untouched. Inequality widens, not by accident, because the system itself rewards concentration of power and wealth at the expense of the public. China draws its strength from refusing to tolerate these practices, understanding that once money holds equal weight to politics, governance collapses into corruption, profit takes priority over people, and the nation becomes divided by an inequality gap too wide to close.
China will be dominant and America will be irrelevant. That is what we're seeing some experts say now. With even government think tanks saying the United States is simply not prepared for a war with China and it's already losing the Cold War. And many arguing that most of the blame falls on Trump and his administration, who are fundamentally unserious people who are more focused on owning the libs, even if it means destroying the country that they seek to rule, than they are on defeating China. Arguing, the tariffs were bad enough, but on top of that, they're cutting public research funding, gutting universities, and deporting talented researchers who can help America own the next century. They're also getting rid of programs for clean energy technology and semiconductor manufacturing, while also wiping out America's soft power across the globe. The American psyche has somehow become convinced that change is abnormal this past decade, and experts say that this is essentially giving China an advantage. Noah Smith, for example, comparing the US to the Ming Dynasty and that they were the greatest nation on earth for 200 years, and then they became isolationist, stagnant, and backward-looking. While the Europeans were developing new technologies, China got rid of its ships and restricted foreign trade, believing itself to be better than everyone else. A story that may sound familiar to what's happening now. Though in the now, China's trajectory couldn't be more different than ours, right? They lead the US in 37 out of 44 advanced technologies. By 2030, China will account for 45% of the world's manufacturing due to their fully autonomous factories. And, when DeepSeek came out back in January, it was treated like a Sputnik moment, but Sputnik moments have been happening for a while now in fields like electric cars, robots, cancer treatments, supply chains, and clean energy. Right? You have many industry leaders basically screaming, how many CEOs have to come back from China saying they're building the future there before America wakes up? Among other things, China's due to build 10 nuclear power plants this year, making them the premier nuclear power in the world. Meanwhile, you have Congress pushing this budget that experts say will kill our nuclear power industry. And you've got experts on China like Kyle Chan writing, Mr. Trump doesn't even seem to grasp the scale of the threat posed by China. The characterization of China as a factory that makes cheap junk is wildly out of date, with them then going on to say that China's using a Manhattan Project style focus to achieve their dominance in technology. Right? You have all of this as, China isn't 10 feet tall. They face their own struggles like an aging population, but we can't bank on that because that's happening to us too. Our population is aging just as fast, and actually without immigration, we're projected to age faster than them. And that's because 77% of the US population growth actually comes from immigration and births to immigrant families. And so you've got many saying, it's already hard to compete with a country that outnumbers you 4-1, but we're making it even harder by kicking people off our team. And, all of this is, last year there was a bipartisan consensus on how to win, and that was doubling down on investing in research, supporting universities, forging economic ties across the globe, creating a welcoming and attractive environment for the most talented people in the world and for people to invest their money. But Trump has literally, and I mean literally, like definitionally, done the complete opposite of that. The future can still be American, but we are rapidly running out of time to change that.
In the United States, owning land is freedom. Your land is your land. You bought the land, you got the deed, no one can take it away from you. In China, urban land is owned by the government and rural land is collectively owned by local village organizations. Individuals cannot own land, but instead lease it from the government for a period of 70 years. When the 70 years expire, the land can be renewed for a fee, although the process depends on the specific situation. On top of this, the government is allowed to reclaim land for public use, with compensation to the leaser. But wait, this sounds like eminent domain. If the US government decides that they need your land for public use, they can take it. Granted, the process is a bit more formalized, but if they want it, they can take it. But at least that land is yours otherwise, right? Well, that's assuming you pay your property taxes. If for whatever reason, say you lost your job or fell into a coma for several years, boom, the government sells your property and it ain't yours no more. China, on the other hand, doesn't have property tax. You can coma all you want, and when/if you wake up, that land is still yours for 70 years. Plus 70 years, assuming that you can renew.
Why is China allowed to conduct imperialism in our hemisphere? China plans to rule the world.